Today, we are returning to the ocean to look at the family Phocoenidae, more commonly known as the porpoises. Although commonly confused with dolphins, porpoises are in their own family and are fascinating, if often overlooked cetaceans. Before moving on, I just want to quickly mention that porpoises are very hard to photograph, and many species are rarely seen alive. As a result, some of the images in this video are of dead individuals. I have made an effort to avoid any photos that are particularly gruesome, and I show alive animals where possible, but I did want to mention it as a warning for anyone that might prefer not to see images like this. Like the whales and dolphins, porpoises are in the order Artiodactyla, sometimes called Cetaceodactyla, to show that includes the cetaceans. Artiodactyla contains the even-toed ungulates like camels, pigs, and ruminants. Hippopotamuses are their closest living relatives. Have a look at one of my other videos on the subject if you want a more detailed breakdown of Artiodactyla. Cetacea is the inferior order that contains the whales, dolphins, and porpoises. It is descended from mammals that became adapted for an aquatic lifestyle. I talk much more about the evolution of whales in my video on baleen whales, so definitely check that out if you are interested in an in-depth breakdown of how they evolved from hoofed land mammals to being entirely aquatic. Cetacea has two broad groups known as parvorders. I have already done videos on Mystaceti or the baleen whales. Today we will be venturing into the other group, Odontoceti or the toothed whales. The first thing to clarify is that the words whale and dolphin are used colloquially, but do not mean anything in a scientific context. This is because, in the phylogeny, whales and dolphins are not separate groups, but some whales are more closely related to dolphins than they are to the other whales, and the reverse is also true. For example, as we will see in a minute, the beaked whales are more closely related to all of the dolphins than they are to any of the baleen whales, yet both are still called whales. The only correct term to encompass all whales is the cetaceans, but that term also includes the dolphins and porpoises, so it does not exclusively refer to whales. Similar examples can be used for the dolphins, although since all of them are in the parvorder Odontoceti, they can at least be referred to as Odontocetes, although again that does still include the toothed whales and the porpoises, so still cannot be used to only refer to dolphins. Porpoise, however, is a scientifically accurate word. All porpoises are only found in the family Phocoenidae, and none are found in any other family. On top of that, Phocoenidae only contains porpoises with no so-called whales or dolphins. Therefore, the use of porpoise is scientifically accurate, even if many people couldn't tell the difference between a porpoise and a dolphin. Either way, Odontoceti contains all three, dolphins, porpoises, and whales. The least related of the toothed whales are the two families of sperm whale, with 3 species between them. The sperm whale is the largest of the toothed whales and also the largest living toothed predator. Next is the South Asian river dolphins in the family Platanistidae. There are 2 living species of these, which are easily recognizable by the massively elongated mouth, which is a little reminiscent of a crocodile's jaws. They are nearly blind, but sight would not be much use in the murky rivers where they live anyway. They do have excellent hearing, and also have echolocation to help them navigate and locate their prey. The beaked whales in the family Ziphioidae are one of the least known groups of all mammals. Over 20 species have been named, but it is possible that there are others that have not been formally discovered. They are rarely seen at the surface, although as mammals they must still surface to breathe. Most of the information we do have comes from stranded individuals. The next clade contains some more of the river dolphins. The first one only has a single species, the Baiji, or the Yangtze river dolphin. However, this is presumed extinct as there has not been a confirmed sighting of it in the last 40 years. The next one also only has a single living species, the La Plata river dolphin, which, despite its name, is found offshore in the coastal waters in parts of Brazil and Argentina. The last family in this clade contains the South American river dolphins in the family Aeneidae. This contains 4 species, found in river systems throughout South America, including the famous pink river dolphins found in the Amazon River. The final clade of toothed whales has 3 more families. The first is likely the one you think of when you hear the word dolphin. This is Delphinidae, containing the oceanic dolphins like the orca, bottlenose, and many others, with more than 30 species in total. The next family is the subject of today's video, Phocoenidae, containing the porpoises. The final family is actually my personal favourite group of cetaceans, and is also the closest living relatives to the porpoises. This is the family Monodontidae, which has two living species, the beluga and the narwhale. So, returning to the porpoises, what are the differences between porpoises and dolphins? One of the easiest to see is the shape of their dorsal fin. Most dolphins have that classic triangular fin, but the fins of porpoises are much smaller and tend to be more rounded. There are also several species of porpoises that have no dorsal fin at all. There are other differences as well. Dolphins have a beak or long snout while porpoises do not, and the shape of their teeth are also different. Their behaviours tend to be a bit different as well, as porpoises tend to be a little shyer and less social than dolphins are. These features are just guidelines, as there can be exceptions to some of them. For example, the Hector's dolphin from New Zealand is also noted for how round their dorsal fins are as well as their lack of a beak or snout, but they are still classified as dolphins. Despite this, in most cases, the fins are the easiest way to tell dolphins and porpoises apart. Porpoises include the smallest of all living cetaceans, the Vaquita. Unfortunately, the Vaquita is also the rarest living cetacean, but we will get into that more when we get to that species. The different porpoises have a wide variety of habitats, from rivers and streams to the open ocean, and from tropical seas to polar waters. They are fast swimmers, but like other cetaceans have fused neck vertebrae. This gives them more stability when swimming, but means that they can't turn their head, and so decreases their flexibility when compared to seals. Porpoises have a thick layer of blubber. This serves several functions: insulation, some protection from predators, and as an energy reserve for when food is scarce. Porpoise calves are only born with a thin layer of blubber, but their mother's milk is very high in fat, so they quickly increase their blubber levels after being born. Unlike most mammals, porpoises are conscious breathers. This means that they have to decide when to breathe, unlike, for example, humans, who breathe without thinking about it. While this makes sense for a fully aquatic animal, like a porpoise, it does make sleeping more difficult, as they wouldn't breathe if they were fully unconscious. While sleep in wild porpoises is difficult to study, captive porpoises have shown an interesting strategy to deal with this problem. It appears that porpoises are able to put half their brain to sleep at a time, so the awake half can allow it to swim and breathe normally. Being in the ocean creates an interesting problem when it comes to hearing. For a very simplified explanation, in humans and most other land-based mammals, the ear works because air has a low resistance to sound, while the cochlear fluid in the ear has a high resistance. The middle ear balances out the two, sending signals that the brain can interpret as sound. This doesn't work in water, because water has a similar resistance to sound that the cochlear fluid does, and so there is no imbalance between the two that can be equalized. So, in porpoises, they actually hear in their throat, from which the sound is sent through a low sound-resistant cavity into the inner ear, creating the required imbalance. The ear in porpoises is actually surrounded by air-filled cavities, essentially separating it from the skull entirely. This is believed to allow them to tell what direction the sound is coming from. Again, to compare this with humans, we achieve direction because we have two ears, so our brain can instinctively tell which ear the sound is louder in, giving us a sense for which direction the sound is coming from. I did not really intend to spend so long talking about how porpoises hear, but since we are, I might as well add one more piece to this puzzle. Porpoises are capable of echolocation, similar to dolphins and bats. They have an organ known as a melon that allows them to emit high-frequency clicks. Their hearing can then interpret the way these sound waves bounce off objects to pinpoint them. Despite their echolocation, porpoises do still have good eyesight in both dim and bright light, but are believed to have more limited colour vision than most other mammals. They do not, however, appear to have a sense of smell, and lack taste buds, so may not have a sense of taste either. That last one is a little disputed, as porpoises certainly do show preferences for different fish, so must have some way to determine what food they like more than others. That is probably enough porpoise biology for today, so let's start looking at some of the actual species. The first clade in the phylogeny contains the three species of finless porpoise, which, as the name suggests, do not have a dorsal fin. The first of these is the Indo-Pacific finless porpoise, Neophocaena phocaenoides. This is a coastal porpoise, found along the shoreline of southern Asia from the Gulf of Persia all the way east to Indonesia and then north to China and Taiwan. This northern part of its range does overlap with the East Asian finless porpoise, so telling the two apart in that region can be difficult. Indo-Pacific finless porpoises can get over 2 meters or 6 feet long, but most are a lot smaller than this. They have unusually large flippers for their body size, which are around 20% of their total body length. All of the finless porpoises, including the Indo-Pacific, have a lot of nerve endings along the ridge of their spine. It has been suggested that this may have some sort of sensory function, although its exact use is still not known. Finless porpoises do not perform the acrobatic leaps that dolphins are known for, but instead typically swim just beneath the surface and roll onto their side when they need to breathe. This makes them much harder than dolphins to notice. They are not picky eaters and will eat a range of fish, cephalopods and crustaceans. They will even eat plant matter, rice and eggs that are in the water if they get the opportunity. Their breeding season is in the late spring or early summer. The gestation period is 10 to 11 months, and they will have one calf at a time. If resources are plentiful, then they will have one pregnancy every year. Indo-Pacific finless porpoises are listed as vulnerable by the IUCN. Since its preferred habitat is coastal waters, it frequently comes into contact with humans. Its largest threats are entanglement in gillnets and pollution, both of which you will quickly realise are a common theme for threats to most porpoise species. The more northern finless porpoise is the East Asian finless porpoise, Neophocaena sunameri. They are found in the coastal waters around China, Taiwan, Korea and Japan. They only live in the shallows, never more than 50 metres or 160 feet deep, in areas with a soft or sandy seafloor, but they will also go into estuaries and mangrove swamps. The East Asian finless porpoise is rated as endangered by the IUCN, as their population has decreased by more than 50% in less than 3 generations. In parts of their range, a population decline as high as 70% has been recorded during 22 years, which is extremely concerning for the ongoing survival of this species. Gillnets and pollution are considered the main concerns for their ongoing survival. Studies have found high levels of mercury and arsenic, along with other heavy metals, in East Asian finless porpoises. This is particularly a problem with porpoises, as they are predators, feeding on fish, crustaceans and cephalopods, and so are prone to bioaccumulation. Bioaccumulation is when harmful metals or toxins are ingested in the animals at the bottom of the food chain, but are then passed on to the predators when those animals are eaten. Small amounts of these are not necessarily harmful, but predators accumulate in a lot more than animals lower in the food chain as they eat a lot of affected prey. This results in the chemicals being concentrated enough in the predators that they can start to have harmful impacts. Another form of pollution of concern to these porpoises is microplastics. These have been linked to the deaths of several porpoises, and even if it doesn't outright kill them, it can still cause issues with their breathing, growth rate and reproductive success. This was a difficult species to research, as it is difficult to tell what information being reported belongs to which species of finless porpoises. A lot of online sources seem to get them confused or treat them as identical, making it very difficult to separate them out. For example, Wikipedia had large sections of text on the webpage for both the East Asian and the Indo-Pacific finless porpoises that was copy and pasted verbatim, meaning I have no idea which species the text was originally written about. Of course, part of this confusion is definitely due to the changes in taxonomic status of these animals, but it still makes it challenging to research. East Asian finless porpoises were originally considered a subspecies of the Yangtze finless porpoises, but genetic testing has confirmed that these are a separate species. So, moving on to the last of the finless porpoises, the Yangtze finless porpoise, Neophocaena asiaorientalis, is notably different to the others in that they are an entirely freshwater species. With the presumed extinction of the baiji, or Chinese river dolphin, they are in fact the only remaining freshwater cetacean in China. They are found in the Yangtze River system, and in some of the lakes that feed into it. Given this drastically different habitat, in hindsight it is not really surprising that they are a different species to the East Asian finless porpoise, and genetic testing has confirmed that the porpoises have been isolated from each other for thousands of years. The Yangtze finless porpoise is considered endangered by the IUCN, and it is estimated that the remaining population contains about 1,000 individuals. Despite efforts by the Chinese government and conservationists, the Yangtze River is not a healthy waterway, and so there are many continuing threats to these porpoises. Illegal fishing is a possible issue, and gillnets are widely used throughout their range. However, while these certainly don't help, they are actually not thought to be the main threat to the porpoises. However, the massive increase in human traffic and pollution are certainly factors. Habitat degradation is also caused not just from the pollution, but also from the extensive sand mining of the river and lake beds, which destroys habitat for both the porpoises and the prey that they rely on. Dams are also having a large impact, isolating porpoise populations and not allowing them to move freely throughout their range. These factors have all combined to result in the remaining porpoise populations declining every year. In 1994 to 2008, it is believed that the porpoise population had an average yearly decline of about 6%, but by 2012 this was estimated to be nearer 14%. It is not all doom and gloom for these porpoises though, as there have been some successes with them in recent years. By 2017, the population was estimated to have increased to 1,017 individuals, and the porpoises have started reappearing in areas where they have not been seen in years, such as Nantong. Part of the reason for the recent trends is that 5 nature reserves have been set up to try and reverse their decline. The oldest of these is the Tianjia Oxbow Nature Reserve, which increased its population from 5 to 40 over 25 years. Today, this nature reserve is actually nearing its maximum capacity of porpoises, with around 80, but potential space for only 100. Scientists have also been studying their reproductive habits in the hopes that captive breeding programs can also bolster the wild populations. And this resulted in the first captive bred porpoise being born in 2005. Since that is the last of the finless porpoises, we can now move on to the next clade. As its name might suggest, the harbour porpoise, Phocoena, lives in coastal waters. They enter bays, estuaries and fjords. It will also enter rivers, and they have occasionally been found hundreds of kilometres from the ocean. It is probably the porpoise most seen on whale watching tours, and is found in the northern Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, as well as the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov. It has several subspecies, although the exact number is disputed. Harbour porpoises are smaller than most other porpoises, with an adult length of 1.4 to 1.9 metres, or roughly 4 to 6 feet. Since we have been looking at the finless porpoises, it is worth pointing out that the harbour porpoise, like all of the remaining porpoises, has a dorsal fin, making it look much more dolphin-like. They will mostly eat fish, although some populations have also been recorded hunting squid and crustaceans as well. They tend to be solitary animals, but have sometimes been observed working in groups to herd fish together. Their main predators are larger sharks and orcas. Interestingly, bottlenose dolphins off the coast of Scotland have been observed attacking and killing harbour porpoises. They do not eat the porpoises, so the reason for this aggression is unknown, but several theories have been put forward. One theory is that they want to reduce the competition for fish, since they both feed on similar species. Another suggestion is that the bottlenose dolphins perform infanticide, and mistake the porpoises for juvenile bottlenoses. Female porpoises become sexually mature at 3 to 4 years old. The gestation period is 10 to 11 months, and females can have one calf a year for several years in a row. This means that they are often pregnant and lactating at the same time. Calves are weaned after 8 to 12 months. In the wild, their life expectancy is around 8 to 13 years, but they can live as long as 20 in exceptional cases. In captivity, they can live even longer, up to about 28 years. While the species as a whole is rated least concerned by the IUCN, certain populations have been assessed separately. The Baltic Sea population, just off the coast of Europe, has a separate rating of critically endangered, with just over 200 individuals left in the population. The subspecies in the Black Sea is also not doing well, with a rating of endangered. These population ratings mean that the species is overall carried by their Atlantic and Pacific populations, which are both doing well, and despite the pressures of fishing and pollution, are considered one of the most abundant cetaceans in the Northern Hemisphere. The closest relative of the harbour porpoise is Dall's porpoise, Phocoenoides dalli. Now you might notice that this has been placed in a different genus than the harbour porpoise. This is because, historically, Dall's porpoise was believed to be much more distantly related from the other porpoises. However, with genetic analyses proving that they are in fact very closely related, it is likely that it will be moved to the same genus as the other porpoises in the future. For now though, this hasn't happened, so it is still in its own genus, Phocoenoides. Dall's porpoise is endemic to the North Pacific Ocean and prefers deeper and colder waters. They like waters colder than 18 degrees Celsius or 64 Fahrenheit, and can be found further south than their usual range when it is an unusually cold year. While they do prefer deeper waters, they can be found near the shore if the area has submarine canyons or is in a fjord, and so the water is much deeper than is normal for coastal waters. It is the largest species of porpoise, reaching lengths of up to 2.3 meters or 7.5 feet. It also has two subspecies which can be distinguished by the white belly on one extending much further forwards. They exhibit sexual dimorphism as well, with males being larger and having a more forward-angled dorsal fin. Dall's porpoises are opportunistic feeders, chasing a wide variety of prey, including both surface and midwater column species. They typically live in small groups of 2 to 10 porpoises, but gatherings of hundreds have very rarely been recorded. They have a polygynous mating system where the males compete with each other for access to the females. A male will usually guard a female he mates with to ensure that he is the father of her offspring. Gestation usually lasts for 11 to 12 months, and females usually give birth once every 3 years. Their life expectancy is about 15 to 20 years. While orcas are one of their main predators, interesting interactions between the two species have also been observed. Dall's porpoises have been found playing with orca calves, and one porpoise was observed travelling with a pod of orcas with no apparent issues in the 1980s. They are considered least concern and are believed to have a global population of over 1 million. Moving on to the final clade of porpoises, we start with the species that was one of the inspirations for this video, the Vaquita, Phocoena sinus. The Vaquita is the smallest of all living cetaceans, with the females reaching lengths of around 1.5 meters or just under 5 feet, and the males being even smaller. This size is actually reflected in the name, as the Spanish suffix "ita" is an affectionate diminutive, often being translated into English as little. The name Vaquita therefore translates to mean little cow. The Vaquita has the smallest range of any known cetacean, only being found in the northern portion of the Gulf of California. The waters in this area are shallow, only reaching depths of less than 150 meters or 490 feet. A large part of their diet is fish found on the seafloor, but they are generalists and can feed on almost any small fish, squids or crustaceans. It is hard to say much more about the social or reproductive behaviors of Vaquita due to how few of them are left in the wild. They are critically endangered, with estimates suggesting that there are 10 or less mature individuals remaining, making it one of the rarest species on Earth. The International Whaling Commission issued its first extinction alert in its 70-year history in 2023 to raise awareness of the plight of the Vaquita. Its numbers have been low for a long time, but were estimated as 567 in 1999, giving it a decline of 98% over the last 25 years. The sad truth is that more Vaquita are killed every year than the remaining adults can give birth to. While predators and pollution do take their toll on the Vaquita, the largest threat to them is gillnets. I have mentioned these as threats for several other species we have looked at, but they are believed to be the main reason for the Vaquita's decline. Gillnets are walls of netting that are placed in the water column. They are highly effective at catching fish and so are widely used, but unfortunately can also have a large amount of bycatch, including marine mammals. The size of the mesh in the netting can vary a lot depending on the species they are targeting, but it can also trap mammals, getting caught on their flippers or fins. There are two main types of gillnets, both of which can cause problems for porpoises. Set nets are weighed down and so cause trapped mammals to drown as they cannot return to the surface to breathe. Drift nets are designed to move with currents, but trapped mammals will end up dragging the net with them as they continue to forage. This extra weight will quickly tire the porpoise. Even if the porpoises escape from being entangled in one of these nets, they will often die later from complications with their capture. This could be from stress or exhaustion, or the wounds inflicted by the net becoming infected. Because of these risks, there are severe restrictions on the use of gillnets in many parts of the world, including a total ban by the Mexican federal government within the Vaquita's range. However, they are not able to adequately enforce this ban, and so many illegal gillnets are still in use in the Gulf of California. With a population size of only 10, many people would argue the species is functionally extinct. That means that the remaining individuals are irrelevant to the ecosystem and they have no possibility of recovering, so are basically extinct even though technically a few individuals are still alive. However, a study by Robinson et al. In 2022 argued against this for the Vaquita. Robinson believes that if their habitat was adequately protected, the species could recover. One issue with such a small population recovering is the bottleneck effect, where those remaining have little genetic diversity, so the population they establish will be more susceptible, for example, to deformities or diseases that the founding members just happen to lack a resistance to. Inbreeding is also a real issue in such small populations, as the options for an unrelated mate are minimal, However, in her study, Robinson found that the remaining Vaquita maintain a surprising genetic diversity for such a small population, and this led to her conclusion that if the threat of gillnets could be eliminated, the porpoises could recover without suffering from the effects of inbreeding. That is at least a hopeful note to end this section on, but I should emphasize that it is a big if. With so few porpoises left, immediate action would be required to enforce the ban on gillnets. Finally, if you're wondering whether it might be easier to take the remaining Vaquita into captivity and attempt a breeding program with them, then this has already been tried. Cetaceans are notoriously difficult to keep captive, and while some success has been shown with other porpoises, like the Harbour and Yangtze Finless, the same has not proven possible with the Vaquita. The most recent attempt, in 2017, resulted in the female dying and her calf becoming extremely stressed before being released. With such a small population size, a single death is a tragedy, and so it has not been attempted again since. As a last resort, all remaining Vaquita could be taken captive, but the risks with this are possibly larger than leaving them in the wild, so it has not been attempted. The next species is the spectacled porpoise, Phocoena dioptrica. It is one of only 2 porpoises found in the southern hemisphere, and it is one of the least studied of all cetaceans. It is only found in the Antarctic and subantarctic waters of the Southern Ocean, occasionally being seen off the coast of New Zealand and Argentina. Most of the information we do have about the species comes from stranded individuals, as they are very rarely seen otherwise. They have extremely distinctive coloration. Their back, dorsal fin and lips are very dark grey, almost black, while their belly is white. This is obvious countershading, which is a camouflage technique seen in some aquatic animals. Countershading is when the upper parts of the animal is a dark colour, so birds have trouble seeing them in the dark water, while the underparts are a light colour, so aquatic predators like sharks and seals have trouble seeing them against the bright light of the surface. The largest spectacled porpoise found was a male and was 2.2 metres or 7 feet long, but given how rarely this species is seen, it is hard to know what the average size is. It is believed to feed on fish and squid like most porpoises. Nothing is known about their breeding habits, although young are usually seen in late spring and summer, suggesting that they do have a breeding season. The IUCN lists them as least concern as of 2018, despite the lack of information surrounding them. Prior to this, it was listed as data deficient, which the current assessment mentions might still be an appropriate rating. However, they changed it, mostly due to the large presumed range of the species and the lack of human interactions, so they assume the population is doing fine without human interference. The last species of porpoise, and the other southern hemisphere one, is Burmeister's porpoise, Phocoena spinipinnis. Unlike its spectacled cousin, it is a coastal species, but despite this, it is still poorly known. It is found around much of the coastline of South America, encompassing Chile, Argentina and Uruguay, and the southern coastline of Peru and Brazil. It is most commonly seen dead, either stranded on beaches or as bycatch from fishing vessels. This gave rise to the common name of black porpoise, as dead ones do appear black. However, live sightings prove that they are actually a dark grey colour, and so this common name has fallen out of use. Live ones are rarely seen as they are shy, tend to move away from human vessels, and when surfacing make little noise or splashing to alert humans to their presence. Similar to the spectacled porpoise, they were listed as data deficient until 2018, when their threat rating was changed to near threatened. They got this increased threat level because, unlike the spectacled porpoise, they are often killed as bycatch, and their extremely coastal distribution makes it more likely for them to encounter humans or become stranded. They are also susceptible to severe El Niño weather events. These events can cause the anchovies and other fish in the region to die or leave, resulting in the predators that rely on them dying or needing to leave the area. This effect on Burmeister's porpoise was proven after such a weather event in 1997, during which many of the porpoises were found stranded on beaches in Peru. I hope you enjoyed this video. Porpoises are fascinating animals, with a surprising variety in a single family, from the finless Asian species to the poorly known southern species and the critically endangered Vaquita. Porpoises face many threats, and as a result many are becoming rarer and many are likely to face extinction, largely due to bycatching gillnets or due to pollution. Thank you for listening, and feel free to suggest another group of animals you want to see me cover in the comments.